Gunline. Fire mission coming down. I'm your host, Lopez, and you're listening to the On the Gunline podcast, where we just chop it up and shoot the shit crap like we would out in the field. I got to watch my mouth because for the first 2 minutes, YouTube likes to go through to make sure you're not saying anything inappropriate. So, anyways, today I have a wonderful guest here with me. She goes by BGP or AKA Brown Girl Pride. She is a hot sensation on the freaking Talks of Tick, where we've actually talked before. I had her on the podcast a while back ago. She's a Air Force veteran and very pro native rights. And by native, I'm talking about Americans. And by Native Americans, I'm not talking about us that were just born here, but us that have roots here before colonialism, and not just in North America, but as well as in Central and South America. Anyways, with that said, I'm prefacing all this because today we will be discussing our points of view regarding what's really a hot issue, a hot topic out there in the streets today, and that's going to be immigration. Whether you call it illegal immigration, whether you call it humanitarian migration, call it what you want. It's just people coming from different parts of the world into the U.S. and basically we're gonna have a open discussion where I will be asking a lot of questions because I have thousands and thousands of questions. My deal to her was that I will come in with an open mind, just like I know that most of y'all are here on this platform that listen to this are open minded. Some of us, a little hard headed because that's just the way that we are. But yeah, we're gonna give her due respect. And with that said, if this is your first time here, do me a solid, smash that subscribe button, give a love tap to that notification bell to the all, so you know when I'm dropping that new content, whether it's the podcast like today, the Vet Bro reactions, or the word on the streets. So without further ado, welcome BGP.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for being here. My gosh, I mean, it's been blowing up out there with this hot topic that's going on, man. And I know from our last conversation, the first time that you were here, you are um very pro. I'm trying to find a different word, but I know that you're very active in the community of bringing awareness to those that are native to the country, or as well as lost their indigenous roots. In
Mm-hmm.
other words, they were because of colonialism that occurred. But before we get started and moving there, I do want to show one video, which is, well, you know what? We'll get there first. Uh, how's your day going, yo?
It's going good. It's my
Good, good.
day off. I love days off.
Right. And
Everybody else.
and dude, I'm on caffeine and I'm caffeinated as fuck. So just know that. All right, the 2 minutes are over, so we can cuss now. Jesus fucking Christ, this shit was killing me, dog. You know us veterans, we can't keep our mouths shut without a fuck is a comma. You know,
Bro, they get mad at me. They're like, you cuss all the time. That's how I talk. It's what
it's
we do. It's the culture.
exactly, dude, exactly. You know what? That just brought up. Thank you for reminding me of something. We'll talk about that too. But anyways, let me play a quick video. Let me play a quick video just to show everyone where we are coming from. All right, so I gotta remember how to share the screen. All right, there's that. Then I gotta go here. Then I gotta go here. I gotta see my fine ass face on the screen again and share. All right, and here we go. All right, so this is the video that I made regarding. Oh, and by the way, this video has now been pulled on TikTok. They said that I can't say this apparently, so TikTok can go fuck themselves. But this is wait, audio. Okay, this is the video that sparked off our conversation for today. What do you think of my plan? Shut down the borders, find out what we have here, impose a tax on them for trespassing, give them temporary status until we get all their paperwork back to give them permanent status. Once that tax is paid off, they're good to go, and that way we got additional funds from that tax to fund the border. But you know what? At the end of the day, it makes too much sense, and common sense is something that America just doesn't have anymore. Damn. So y'all make sure y'all go follow me at OTGL_podcast on the Talks of Tick, as well as Brown Girl Pride at the Talks of Tick as well. All right. So That really got this conversation going between us. And so, what are your thoughts on that little tidbit that I just gave?
So I believe my response was, or we can just have open borders, right?
Hmm.
And
Right, right.
we wouldn't have to deal with any of this. I mean, and at the end of the day, like we've been doing for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, this whole border construct is a colonial concept.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so for me, I don't just advocate for open borders at the southern border, even though that's my main focus because
Hmm.
of what's going on at the southern border right now. But also, I advocate for open borders everywhere.
Okay. So let's back it up a bit.
Sure.
Um, I'm a first generation American here, U.S. citizen, due to my parents coming here illegally in 1970 ish. All right, so that's why I'm kind of like, no pun intended, on the fence on this one sometimes. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Because it's a pretty iffy topic, a very touchy topic, mainly because I believe there needs to be some kind of border control. There needs to be some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Identification requirement. And if you see when those, let's talk about the borders being open. All right, we got millions of people trying to come over here yearly. All right, to the states.
Mhm.
All right, these millions of people are not coming here just to, like you had mentioned. They we had trade routes and stuff like that, right? During the open borders,
Mhm.
these people aren't coming up here to trade. They're coming up here to stay. So where, if we had open borders, those people that are coming here to stay, where would they stay at?
Have you driven through Texas, sir?
I have.
There's so much space out there.
Who's going to build their communities?
So if you look at the 2020 census, right,
Hmm.
you can look up the stats on how many vacant homes there are in the United States.
Hmm.
16 million. It's like 15
Okay.
point something million. So almost 16 million homes that are vacant sitting there.
Okay.
Nobody's living, and this isn't, housing that is, you know, uh inhabitable, right? This is
Hmm.
housing that you can literally move a family into if you wanted it.
Who owns those homes?
The banks own them because for various reasons, either the contracting company that was building the homes, they ran out of money, they, or the contracts, they didn't fulfill their contracts, or they overpriced the homes and they just weren't selling, things like that. So there's
Okay.
various reasons why these homes are sitting there. There's two towers. If you saw the video of the two towers in LA, these high-rise towers that were
Hmm.
graffitied up, they built these two high rises with all these apartments in them, but
Hmm.
nobody's living in them. They couldn't finish them completely because the Asian investor ran out of money. So you got
Okay.
all these places where we can actually, on top of that, that's just the vacant housing. We're not
Hmm.
even talking about all the empty buildings now because of COVID, all these work from home jobs. You've got a lot of buildings now that were being leased by companies across the board for their admin staff that they
Okay.
don't even need anymore. So there's a lot of things that we can do as Americans, as a government, to
Hmm.
actually create that
Okay.
housing,
So
but we're
that's
not doing it. You know.
exactly, and I'm okay with that. I'm 100% okay with that.
Hmm.
Because first of all, before we try to take care of anyone outside of our borders, um, we need to take care of our people here within our own country. Now, I love my country 100%. I hate my fucking government with a passion, and I think a lot of people misunderstand that. I hate my government, but I love my country. And so these 16 million homes that are available,
Hmm.
owned more than likely by the bank because they've been foreclosed on for one reason or another.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, that would be maybe a good place to start with our homeless population.
Oh, of course,
Whatever.
we
So
have housing that would not only house all our unhoused in the United States,
mhm.
but all of the migrants coming up here. Over
Nah,
here.
but see, that's the thing. These migrants are they don't have any rights to be here.
What do you mean?
They, in other words, they don't have any rights to be in this country because they weren't born within our borders.
What do you mean? What rights? What do you mean? They still are protected under the Constitution. You know that, right?
Yeah,
Under the
because they cross. What's crazy is we protect them under the Constitution after they break a law. How
what law?
crazy is that? Coming in here legally. Hence why they're called illegal immigrants. Their migration is illegal.
But the vast majority of them are coming under asylum seeking.
Yeah, but let's be real. Why do they have to come to the U.S. for asylum? Why can't they stop in Mexico? Why can't they stop in? Because the ones that are seeking asylum, they're coming from, like, let's say Venezuela. They're
Hmm.
coming from Cuba. All
Hmm.
right, okay, go get asylum in the first country that you land that's outside of the country you're seeking asylum from. Like, for example, in El Salvador, there are a lot of people that were seeking asylum from El Salvador, and I know this for a fact because I'm part Salvadoran. I lived in El Salvador actually when I was 16, and I can tell you, yeah, there's a lot of poverty out there that people were trying to escape from. I get it 100%, and however, comma, because we have this blanket statement of asylum. What exactly is the asylum that they're trying to get away from? Or, what are they trying to be protected from? You know what I'm saying? And I'll go back again. Why can't they just stop in Guatemala? Why can't they go to Nicaragua? Why can't they go to Belize? Why don't they go to these other countries? Why do they want to come here first?
Because we're responsible for the reason why.
No, we're not.
What do you mean? We've placed sanctions on a lot of these countries, so they
We're
don't.
not responsible for, they're responsible for their own government.
Correct, but when you place sanctions onto a country, you cut their income out of the country. So you stop exports, you stop imports.
Hmm.
So now you don't have an income to send out because you can't sell your exports out to other countries. You can't get imports in. So the supplies that you would need or the things that you would need that you would get from other countries that import these things, you no longer have that. So now you're
Hmm.
creating a chokehold, and that chokehold is supposed to be designed, as you and I know, being in the military, is supposed to be designed to start a coup, to start the people, to get them enraged in order for them to then flip over their government, take over their government. That's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to piss off the people enough to be like, we're tired of living in slums like this. So
Hmm.
now we're going to now come up and have a revolution type of deal. And that's the whole idea of it. But if the people don't have the power to have a revolution, if they're being also oppressed by their government, on
Hmm.
top of now the sanctions that are being placed on them, they have, on top of adding the cartels in which the our government has
But
funded.
see, all those problems sound like them problems,
They're not.
not our
Those problems
problems.
are created by us.
They
So
were
when you create sanctions onto a country, you're not creating sanctions just on the government. You're creating sanctions on the entire populace. It affects the populace as a whole, right?
Mhm,
And if you're coming from a government that's already being in an oppressive state, then now what our government's objective is literally to do is to create that uprise. That's what
mhm.
it's supposed to do, but that doesn't always happen, especially when you're talking with oppressed governors or governments, right? At the end of the day, though, it's not even just that.
Mhm.
It's the fact that even though we have put these sanctions out there, it's the other things that when we're coming to talk about open borders, a lot of people think open borders were just pre-colonial. They weren't. We had
Mhm.
open borders until 1917. The
Okay.
European Union has
Okay.
open borders within the continent of Europe. So this is not a foreign concept. This is not something where we're talking about like, oh, this would be a horrible thing. Looking at the stats, looking at the studies, the European Union, they came when they enacted the Schengen Act, and this was in the 90s. I don't know the exact year in the 90s, but it was in the 90s. They did a study in 2015, and they also did a study in 2021, I believe, where they looked at how much crime was committed by migrants.
So
There was no significant increase. There was also no significant increase in foreign terrorism.
so let me ask you, the European Union. Okay, we're talking about England, Wales, Ireland, Scotland, right?
Spain,
And
Italy.
all them good people, the UK and all them,
Yeah,
right?
there's over like 20 something countries.
Okay, 20 something countries, which would make probably like just the East Coast and maybe a little bit to the Midwest, if that, of the US.
Yeah, but they're still their own countries.
Okay, those countries are probably the size of our states, though.
But they're still their
So
own countries, though. It
uh,
doesn't matter the size.
it
I
does
mean,
matter the size.
is this gonna be a size conversation?
Hey,
No, I'm just
and
kidding.
that's right.
No, but for real, it really doesn't matter the size of the
It
country
does
because
though.
that
It does though.
it really
Because
does.
the
You know why it
stats.
doesn't matter? You know why it doesn't matter? Is
Why?
because each country has its own laws, its own constitution, its own government. It
Right.
has its own policies when it comes to trade agreements. They are able to do whatever they do, regardless of the size. They are still a sovereign nation.
Hmm.
Each state here in the United States is not a sovereign nation, even though
We're
we're
sovereign
bigger than
states, though. We have our own
Not sovereign.
constitutions,
We're
which
still a
fall under the federal constitution, though. But go ahead.
well, we're not sovereign because we have a deal. Each state has a deal with the federal
Hmm.
government that they cannot secede from the government. Otherwise,
Right.
it triggers
God, wish you
a
could.
civil war, right? So therefore, we really don't have. We're not sovereign in that sense. Unlike these
Right.
countries that are sovereign, they literally could leave the. For example, Britain left the European Union, right, with
Hmm.
Brexit, right?
Hmm.
There was no war that was started. It didn't
Right.
trigger a war between all these European countries that were in this union together, right?
Hmm.
But here in the United States, if a state leaves the union, it automatically triggers a civil war. So that's
Right.
the that I mean, there's other differences between a country and a state, but at the end of the day, it's sovereignty that matters.
Right.
And as states, we don't have sovereignty. So this the size doesn't really matter in this case because we're talking about sovereignty.
Well, I mean, it does when you start talking about the populations of these countries versus the population of the United States itself. Um, Again, let's circle back to the open borders platform and them coming over. So let's say we have those open borders again. So we're just going to automatically house these people then.
Why not?
What have they done in order to earn that housing? Because I mean, those houses weren't made for free. Somebody is got a business behind it.
We are responsible for the sanctions in their countries, though.
No, we're not
Why
responsible.
they
We're
can't?
not responsible for them coming here to the states. They could
But
have left
here's
their
the thing.
country anytime they went,
So,
anywhere they
so,
wanted,
so
though.
let me ask you a question, right?
Sure.
All right. If you're coming from a country
Mhm.
that's placed sanctions on your people,
Okay.
okay, and you're like, hey, this country is the one that did it, but they also push this idea of coming here, and as long as you work hard,
Hmm.
as long as you abide to the law, as
Right.
long as you do what you're supposed to do, you too can have the quote unquote American dream,
That's funny you mentioned that. That's going to be one of my topics on
right?
next week. Yeah.
So this is a thing that's pushed by the United States. It's constantly pushing out infomercials on the United States. If you think about it in a way, when you think about everything that they push, Hollywood, everybody is over here talking about how great it is to be an American. You can achieve the American dream. Look at
Hmm.
the inspirational stories from living from the ghetto and now becoming a billionaire type of things, right? These are the things that
I'm
they
not a
push,
billionaire, but I came straight from the hood, and
right?
I
So
live in
they
a beautiful
bring
suburban
that.
area.
So, how many other countries do you see really pushing this idea of freedom, of achieving the American dream as long as you work hard and don't give up? You don't see that coming from many other countries. So now you're looking at this, think of it in a point of view. If you're looking at this as a person who's like, well, because the United States has placed sanctions, but they also say it's the American dream. The American dream. You know, they're a melting pot. They welcome immigrants. They say they're a country built on immigration.
Hmm.
Where do you think they're gonna go?
So, give me 1 second. Diga, mom. Claro, mom, pase. No, tengo la pantalla por detrás. No se puede ver. No se preocupe, mama. All right, sorry. I got my mom here visiting, so yeah. Anywho, all right, so let's bring it back. Let's bring this back. Okay, so I'll agree with you with this.
Hmm.
We do need immigrants here. Legal immigration is what needs to be fixed. All right, there needs to be an easier process for these people that are trying to come over here to come over. I'll give you that. There needs to be a way so that people can migrate to the United States without just being unaccounted for. All right. And the reason I say that is because, look, again, I come from a household of first people that left. My dad is from El Salvador. My mom is from Nicaragua. All right. So when my mom left Nicaragua, it was because of the Sandinistas were starting to rise out there. Communism was taking over, and it was just not a good time to be there. Right. So she came out here to look for, like you were saying, the American dream. Now,
Hmm.
for those that don't know, us first generationers, our parents didn't come here to enjoy the American dream for themselves. They came to provide the opportunity of the American dream for their children. So for because my parents were coming here with the idea of, oh, I'm gonna come here and live lavishly. They came here with the idea of like I'm gonna work my ass off so
Hmm.
that my kids could live better than they would out there in those third world countries. So,
Okay.
and that's
So
why
let me
they go ahead.
question. Why didn't they go to the country next to Nicaragua? Why did they come all the way to the United States?
Because back then, again, and that's a very good question. That is 100% good question. There were more opportunities here for the illegal immigrants to get jobs that it wasn't as strict with the migration as it is now. Now, let's be real. The reason that it's so strict right now is because of overpopulation in these big ass cities. Oh, okay. Have you been to LA? Have you been to
That's
LA?
the reason
Have
why.
you been to LA?
Overpopulation in cities is no, because we have plenty of land and space for anybody to come over
Oh,
here.
give me a
The
break.
problem
Come
is
on, let's be real. Oh,
it's
it's
the problem
overpopulated as fuck out there.
it's the problem of promoting certain cities in a light that it's like everybody thinks that that's where they're gonna go to be actors. Like when we're talking about LA, everybody goes to
My
LA.
parents were not coming here to be actors.
No,
My
I
mom
know
was a
your parents.
teacher
That
in
does
her country and had to come here to clean
no.
houses and hotel rooms.
But what is that? What is it? Doesn't matter even if they're not going over there to be actors. What is pushed out in media? What is pushed out in movies? What is pushed out in TV to these other countries when they watch American TV? It's
So,
Hollywood. It's LA. That's
mm,
where they think that they're gonna
mm-mm.
go and become successful, regardless
So
of whether they
let me
start off.
explain to you why my parents came here then. Okay, my mom had her mom was already living here in the US. She had left Nicaragua to come clean some people's houses. And my grandmother at the time, she was getting old and was like, you know what, Marlene, why don't you come up here, take my spot? I'll go back to Nicaragua. Now, this was a decision that my mom had to make, having 4 kids already. You know what I'm saying? And she was like, you know what? It's getting bad out here. Let me give it a shot. So she went out there. My dad, he left in the 70s from El Salvador. Again, not the greatest place to
So,
be at
so let me ask you, why they choose LA though?
because my parents had family there already. All right.
Okay,
So, and let me explain another thing. You're gonna go to a place, a location that your people already pretty much have roots at. They've already been there. For you're not gonna go somewhere where you don't know anyone. All
okay.
right, right?
Sometimes it depends because
All
not
right,
everybody has roots over here. Not everybody has family over here.
exactly. And that's one of my biggest issues right there. We're gonna get these motherfuckers coming over here.
But they're indigenous people.
No, okay, indigenous
So
to
why are we
where?
preventing indigenous to the Western Hemisphere? Why are we preventing? You know that that southern border was open up until 1918, end of
Right.
1917, beginning of
And
1918.
yeah, there were too many Mexicans coming through.
No, that's not why they closed the
Why
border.
did they close the border
They
down?
closed the border because the United States thought Mexico was allying with Germany. This was during World War One.
There we go.
And but Mexico was not allying with Germany. It was propaganda that was being pushed towards the southern border because of xenophobia. So when they shut down the southern border, they did it under the pretense of we don't want German spies coming through the southern border.
Right.
But hold on.
No, no, no. Because
They did it.
but
They
you
didn't.
said xenophobia, right?
Hold on.
Xenophobic
But
against
let
what
me
though?
finish, bro. They didn't say that about the northern border. They didn't shut down the southern border
Hmm.
because it wasn't a whole bunch of brown people coming back and forth through the northern border. It was a whole bunch of brown people coming back and forth through the southern border. So then when they realized that the intel that they got was wrong, they
Hmm.
decided to push this idea, this fear mongering of they're coming here with diseases. They're bringing typhoid. Now
Okay.
the United States Surgeon General themselves put out a statement, and you could look this up. You
Hmm.
know me, I always have facts, and
Oh, I know
I
you.
don't, I've always looked my stuff up. So then the Surgeon General put out an actual statement saying that there was not a typhoid epidemic at the
Right.
border. Typhoid is caused by lice. A lot of people
Okay.
don't know that. So what they were doing was, you can look this up. It's called the gas bath riots. What they were doing was every 8 days they were spraying down people coming back and forth to the border. Those that were working on this side of the border and going back home. Those
Right.
that had family on this side of the border and going back home.
Right.
Things like that. Every 8 days they had to get sprayed down, literally down to their underwear, sometimes fully
Hmm.
naked, sprayed down with DDT, and then um that happened for 40 years. It actually didn't just stop after a couple of years. It happened for 40 years. A lot of people got cancer. A lot of people got sick. A lot of people died because of this, right? We all know
Right.
what DDT does to people. You know, they tell us, wash your, put your uniforms, dip it in DDT, wash
Right.
it 10 times before you even put it on,
Right.
right? So this is what they were doing, is spraying people down every 8 days. Not only that, they were taking pictures of women naked and placing them in the bars around in these border
So
towns.
let's go back to the border though, about being open
But
and closed.
do you know what that inspired? Those gas baths inspired?
What's
It
that?
inspired, and per his words, Hitler himself
Mhm.
It inspired the gas chambers in World War II.
Okay.
So
So
the whole purpose of shutting down the border and closing those gates, or quote unquote gates,
mhm.
and inserting checkpoints was literally due to xenophobia. They couldn't shut it down because there weren't actual German spies coming through like they thought.
Explain
Find a-
xenophobia, please.
Xenophobia is the fear of another group of people or culture that
Okay.
you aren't familiar with, and if you're thinking that they're coming over to whatever take over or enforce their culture onto you, basically what the
So it
colonizer
goes back to a
was.
little bit when I said because the Mexicans were coming over.
Right. But it's because, but it's not because they were just coming over.
Right.
It wasn't because of that. It was literally because they thought it was German spies coming over
No,
here.
I'm tracking. I'm tracking that.
You
I'm
know what
tracking
I
it. Yeah.
and then they couldn't find, and then they couldn't use German spies as an excuse. So then they
Right.
used these.
Yeah.
And they weren't dirty. They didn't have lice. They
I
weren't
got you.
cool for that.
I got you. I'm
So
picking up what you're putting down.
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
I feel
the
you.
reason for closing the border in the first place was literally due to they didn't want no more brown people.
Yeah, and they didn't want to fucking bite their. They didn't want to tuck their tail in and say they fucked up and they were wrong with the spies
Right.
in Germany.
And
Yeah,
they really
tracking.
didn't want brown people coming back and forth.
Got it. 100%. So we're on the same page here now. Cool.
Hmm.
All right. So that was back in 1919, you said, and then that lasted 40 years, you said?
Starting the end of 1917, beginning of 1918 is when they started shutting the borders down and initiating the gas pass.
Okay, cool.
Mhm.
So yeah, we get it. America was a shitty ass country back then and racist as fuck. 100%. Do not deny that. Do not deny that at all.
Sure,
Um, and
but it still is.
I don't think it's a racist country. I think it's a country that has racist people in it. Hmm.
You don't believe that racism is systemic?
I believe that probably it was an issue back in the day, but I don't believe that we're being oppressed because of our skin or our race nowadays. No, I don't
Really,
really 100%.
really,
I
you don't
think that anybody
believe
who
another zebra with different stripes?
I'm sorry.
You don't believe that it's just another zebra? It's just a zebra with different stripes. They
I
just
believe
they're
honestly, I'm probably gonna sound like fucking Jesse Lee Peterson over here. I believe that anybody is able to make whatever they want of themselves, putting the hard work in.
you don't believe there's an automatic advantage for certain people in this country.
I believe there's an automatic advantage for those that are back in the day. I will say, if you were a white person, obviously, you know, you would have a easier time than other folks. All right. So with that though, I'll say now it's not based on your skin color, it's based on your bank account.
We'll get back to that. Let's get
No,
back.
no, no, no. We can stay on that one right now.
Okay, all right. So here's the thing, right? Let's look at the military, for example, and who they've
Hmm.
recruited over the generations, right?
Sure.
Specifically, go into it, and for the last, I think, maybe decade, 5 to 10 years. I'll say 5 to 10 years.
Sure.
Have switched their practices on going specifically into communities of color. But the reason why it's so easy to sell the military to communities of color is because of the poverty that has been used through redlining, used through segregation, creating different districts through segregation, even though segregation is quote unquote illegal. When you draw the lines of where these neighborhoods go, you can
Mhm.
see it's not a straightforward line. It's zigzags. It goes
Can
around.
people do they have the opportunity to move to different locations if they please? Did they not have that opportunity?
Not always. Not if you don't have the
Since
money.
what you said, let's say the past 10, 15, 20 years. Let's go back 30, 40 years. Did people not have the opportunity to move where they wanted to move?
No, and still don't because of redlining, and it's still been
Come
proven.
on now.
It has. You could definitely look up if there are banks that are currently suing and bank or that are being sued, and banks that have lost lawsuits and have to actually pay out civil suits to people for redlining people of color, like literally not giving them loans for housing because of who they were, because of their ethnic background or their
So
racial
I don't know about that. I've never had an issue being a person of color, quote unquote. Uh no, I've never had an issue getting a loan ever.
No,
Uh
you don't have to have an issue of getting a loan, but
mhm.
your interest rates might be higher than that of a white person who has the same
Mm,
credit score as you, and that's already been
mm.
proven. That's why
Again, my
but
interest rate
you
wasn't that bad.
wouldn't know that on a personal level because when
Right,
you look at it, you're like, oh, I got the loan. I didn't have a problem. But at
right.
the end of say, and also on top of that, we also have an added benefit as being veterans on top of that. So
Right.
there's a different thing that goes with a VA loan versus a conventional loan on top
Right.
of that. So
So there
when
were benefits to me joining the military, though.
yes, there's benefits to join the military,
Okay.
but that doesn't mean anything when it comes to what it is that they have done when they target certain groups of people of color.
I don't think it's targeting though.
But it is because
I
what it
mean, you're definitely going to go for someone who may use it as a way to get out of a situation that they're in, for example. Now, me,
right.
I grew up in the
But
hood.
why do you think
Mhm.
they go after them? Because it's much easier to convince people who are in situation where poverty is high, where jobs are scarce,
Mhm. So,
where medical care
so you
is
mean to
not.
help somebody out of the situation they're in to pull them out? Is that's a bad
But
thing
do you
then?
understand that white people don't have to go into the military to get out
No,
of the
actually, a lot of them decide they want to.
no,
They wanted
that,
to.
that's
Who
the
are
difference. Listen to yourself.
exactly? But see, I
White
wanted to join
people
though.
want to.
Hmm.
Most people of color, even though they're cool with wanting to join because it's a choice,
Hmm.
most people join. Look at all, let's talk. That's a question you could ask the veterans. How
Hmm.
many people join to get out of their
I would
small
say a lot of them. I would say
how many
good.
people joined to get medical care? How many people joined because they couldn't get another job
Well,
anywhere?
yeah,
Uh,
there's
How
benefits
many
to joining the
people joined?
military,
And,
obviously.
and who does that affect more? So, did you know indigenous people disproportionately are the highest people, the largest population demographically in the military?
Hmm.
And look at the poverty in indigenous people's
And the reses,
yes.
yeah, who takes care of the res?
What do you mean who takes care of the
Who
res?
takes care of the reses?
Do you
Sometimes
understand? Okay, let's talk about what the reses are. The reses were
no,
when
no,
they
no, 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 no. We're not going to hop topic to topic
no,
to
because
topic
it makes
because
context.
they
There's
they
context to
don't they
this.
run their own reservations though.
They do, but there's context behind this. Do you understand what the reservations were for? They were literal concentration camps.
Got you, but we're
So,
that's what they
so
were.
they
But we're
don't.
talking
They're
about
not
now
living
though.
on lands that can produce
We're
food.
talking
They're
about
living
now.
on lands that don't have water. They're
Why are
living
there
on lands.
other? Then why are there some reservations that are like I'll go to Southern Utes out in Colorado, right? Right there in Durango, in San Ignacio. They don't seem to be doing too bad. They got a nice little
It's not okay.
casino and all that good stuff.
So that's the problem. Is certain reservations, yes, they have contracts and treaties with the government and with certain other entities, or they've been able to do certain things. For example, let's talk about the Navajo Nation. The
Okay.
Navajo Nation, the Dene people, they have no water on their reservation
Okay.
because the government has null and void their treaty practically, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court this past summer, and the Supreme Court ruled that the treaty, quote unquote, that they're supposed to uphold is they're not going to uphold it basically.
Okay.
So now the Navajo Nation can't divert water from the Colorado River to
Damn.
the nation as per their treaty. So now the Navajo Nation doesn't have access to water. That is
Okay.
not the fault of the Navajo Nation
Right.
at all whatsoever. That is the fault of the US government who is
So
not holding to their treaties.
perfect.
So this is
Perfect.
my point. So when
Hmm.
we're talking about reservations, the same thing. The U.S. government placed people into areas where they couldn't farm,
Right.
where they had barren lands, they couldn't farm, they didn't have access to water. They did it on purpose
I'm
to
sure we've
target.
all agreed that the U.S. government was not the greatest to its
But it's
people.
still that way because there's still last summer, like I said, the U.S. government, the Supreme Court, still did not uphold the
Mhm.
U.S. government treaty with the Navajo Nation. They did not uphold it.
So I don't know that case. I don't know the case law. I'm not an attorney, but I don't know what's inside of the paperwork. I don't know what it
But
says in
that's
there.
my point.
So
We
that's
can't sit there
between
and say
the
like
Navajo Nation and the U.S. government to uphold.
correct.
So let's go back.
But when you talk about when you're talking about reservations,
But we're
a
talking about the
big
military and them being in there.
right.
That's
But
where we
that's
went
the
from.
whole point. When you've got people in communities that are poverty stricken,
Hmm.
and that is due to the government making them poverty stricken. If we're talking about reservations,
Hmm.
now if we're even talking about detribalized natives like myself, when
Hmm.
we're talking about living in hoods or barrios or living in urban areas that are poor neighborhoods, things like that, all these types of things, right? We're
Hmm.
talking about those things are created by government structures that have that have used systemic racism to put people of color in disadvantages. What do you think they do when they push people of color out of their neighborhoods to gentrify a neighborhood? They're now pushing them into further poverty because instead of
That I
fixing the
agree with.
housing in those areas, instead of doing what they're supposed to do to help their community, instead they push those people of color out, they fix it up, and then they charge three times the amount it is to
Mhm.
live there, and a bunch of white people then move in and gentrify
So
the
let's
neighborhood.
talk gentrification real quick then. Let's do this. Um, gentrification. Okay, when I first when I was growing up in South Central, all right, for those who don't know what South Central Los Angeles is, it's the area in LA where if you ever seen the movie Colors, you ever seen the movie Boys in the Hood, you ever seen the movie South Central, those were filmed in my area. All right, South Central is a nice little spot just south of downtown, and it's an area, and I was surrounded pretty much. I had Inglewood to my west, Compton, Hawthorne, Linwood, Southgate, Watts. That's my whole area where I grew up at. And when I was growing up there, the majority were black folk, blackity black folk. All right. And the reason I say that is for a reason. Um, when I was 11 years old, you would have thought I was a black kid talking straight up. You would have thought I was a straight little black kid talking. Like if you heard me on the phone with me, you would have thought, oh, this motherfucker black. But
Do
in
black
like the
people have
mid,
an
what's,
accent?
what's that?
Do black people have a certain accent?
Yes, they do. Let's not play like they don't. Like let's play that. Let's not play this game like we don't know what black folk talk like if they're from the hood. Let's not play that game. Come on, BG. Let's not play
Oh,
that shit.
nah, bro. Because at
Are
first,
we really gonna play this game that
yes,
we don't know what black folk talk like?
yes.
Like Chicanos, when they talk, they don't have a certain way they speak. Are we gonna say that there's not a certain way they speak?
No, there's certain accents from hood,
Okay, then
but that
exactly.
all Chicanos speak that certain way, and that doesn't mean all black
Oh
people
my
speak
God.
a certain
I'm
way.
not.
Have you heard a black person? Okay, here, let me tell you how flawed this
I
logic.
heard
Let
educated. I've heard
me tell
how
you.
educated people talk
No,
and
no,
how
oh,
black people from the hood talk.
educated,
Yes, people that are
bro.
educated, whether you're black educated, white educated, brown
What
educated,
is?
how we
Hey,
speak.
hold on. Let me tell you what's wrong with this logic. A
What's that?
black person from Ethiopia sounds like a black person from LA.
Oh my God. No, because I would hear their Ethiopian accent.
That doesn't mean that they're black in Ethiopia. It could be a white person with an Ethiopian accent. That
Let's
yes,
come
yes,
on now.
yes, yes.
You know
So
what?
when you sit in
We
here and
can
you say
play a
that's how
game right
black
now.
people
I'll
talk,
put
you're
look, I
talking
could check this
Jamaican
out.
people. Do
Check this out.
black Jamaican people sound
I
like a
can
person from LA? No. Does a New Yorker sound like a person from LA?
I can
No, they
guarantee
don't.
you.
Accent is
I
based
can
off of
guarantee you.
region,
You can
not
play
race.
any accent over the fucking internet right now. And I can
Accent
guess that
is based
either
off
he's
of region,
black,
not race.
Mexican, or white. I
No,
can
because I
guarantee
know
you.
plenty of Mexicans that don't sound quote unquote Mexican. It's stereotypical.
They talk, they talk. There's a certain way that people talk.
It's based
Black
off of
folk talk a certain way.
dialect of language.
Mexicans talk, okay, dialect. We can use that dialect.
Okay, so let's go there. So certain people, like I could tell a person from northern from New Mexico and southern Colorado
Hmm.
way differently even than someone from California, even though they're
Right,
both Mexican. It's
right,
dialects based on the
right.
Spanish dialect that we had in those
But
regions,
it's not
and
just a
the
dialect.
indigenous
It's I can
and the
tell.
indigenous dialect from
I
those regions.
can tell the way I can tell by how somebody speaks, how they talk, by their tone, whether they're black, white,
Yo,
or
that's your
Mexican.
stereotyping though,
Call it
because
stereotyping all
you
you
could
want.
literally have
You can
somebody.
call it
Because what
stereotyping
you're
all you
saying,
want. Stereotypes are there for a
saying,
reason.
literally, what you're saying is that white people sound intelligent and
Not at
everybody else
all.
doesn't
Have you
sound
ever been to Kentucky?
or
Have you ever
educated.
been to
But when you
Kentucky?
say when people talk a certain way, you're saying that they sound a certain way because of education. That doesn't mean
Yes, that's
I've heard
true.
people with
That is
strong
true.
ass accents are
Bro,
highly more educated than
I
people.
know this, but
Who,
have you ever been to Kentucky? Have you been to Tennessee? Have you been to
of
West
course.
Virginia? Okay, so you know that there, I in no way said white. I said educated. There's a difference on that.
All right, let me give you an example. A lot of
Sure,
people with my accent that I
mhm.
have a quote unquote black accent. I don't
You
have a
do,
quote black accent. I don't.
you do.
I don't. I don't. I really don't. Because that's the problem. My
Okay,
accent
where you grew up at, I'm sure that's how they talk, right?
no. My accent is a combination of my quote unquote Mexican accent, the
Hmm.
accent my family has, and
Right,
living in the South for so long.
right,
Also growing up in hoods. So it
right.
has nothing to do with being black or Mexican. It's
Right,
literally
but it's
it
okay.
literally
It
comes
is. It
from
is. It is. It can be. What's the word I'm looking for? It can be tagged along with the black culture of
again,
speak.
it doesn't matter the race because you can
Yes,
have
it
somebody
does.
who is
Yes, it
who is
does.
black and sound like someone who you
Oh
would
my
consider
god.
white when you talk to them.
Oh
You
my
literally
god,
would.
dude.
So again, a
No,
black person from Jamaica does not sound like a black person from California, who does
I'm
not sound
not
like a
talking
black
about a
person
Jamaican. I'm
from
talking.
Ethiopia.
I knew
Even
Jamaicans in
though
L.A.
regions of the states. A black person from Alabama does not sound like a black person from
Oh,
Washington State.
oh,
Ah,
100%. 100%. I lived in
so
Savannah,
it's
Georgia.
regional. It's not
Trust me.
racial. It's regional.
Okay, but again, it depends on who lives in that area.
No.
Yes.
White and black people sound exactly the same from Alabama. I have heard white and
Oh
black
no,
people
no,
sound
depending
exactly the same
depends
from
where. Depends
Louisiana.
where. Depends where. Depends where.
So my point being, it is still regional, not racial.
It is racial.
No, it's
Who's in
not.
that region?
If
Who's
you
in that
have a white
region?
and a black person who sounds exactly the same from one
Really?
specific region, well, then it's not racial. It's
Oh my
regional. Have you
God,
heard
dude.
people from Louisiana speak?
Have you heard people from okay, perfect. I lived in Georgia. All right. You get a black dude from Georgia that's from the hood, all right, and you get a black dude, or let's get a white dude who lives down the street, and they speak completely different dialects, but it's the same English, just different manner of speaking. Like
Mm,
oh no,
no.
okay.
Mm.
Tell me how many times you've heard a white boy say, "I'm going down the street." I'll wait.
So hold on.
I'll wait. I'll wait.
Hold on. Hold on. That's where you need to distinguish the difference. That's not accent. That's AAVE. Accent
Let's
and
not make up
dialect are
fucking
not the
bullshit. That's like making up fucking. Oh,
no, it's
there's
not.
20,000
Accents and dialects
pronouns.
are
No,
not the same thing
no.
at all.
Don't come up with that African American vernacular English bullshit. No,
What do you
that
mean?
is made
That's
up
a whole,
shit.
it's not made up shit.
Yes, it is.
No, it's
Yes,
not.
it is. There's
No,
only
it's
one
not.
language, and that's English, and
It,
it's either spoken properly or it's
okay, do
not.
you not even know the history? See, this is the problem. If you are gonna sit there and bullshit, that's not African American vernacular English is derived from literally their African languages
Mm-hmm.
that have mixed in with English languages and other languages such as Spanish or French.
If
That
that's how you want to justify it, that's
so
fine.
certain words that they could not pronounce in English because of their other language
No,
had turned into what now they use as a word. That
if
is
you're
a legit, and it has been
okay.
deemed a legit language. The same thing when it happens to different dialects of Spanish.
See,
There's
I'll give you
that.
that for the
Hold on,
Geechee,
but let
but
me.
not for motherfuckers that grew up in the
No,
states that
no.
went to school
So
and
hold
learned how
on.
to speak properly.
No, listen to me. Because there are certain words that we say in Colorado, and you didn't grow up in Colorado. I know you live out, or you
Mm-hmm.
used to live out there, or whatnot. But there are certain words that are said. We actually have a whole ass dictionary that's separate from what is Spanish in Mexico.
Right.
So
Oh, I'm
our
tracking.
right. So we have our own words, our own dialect, our own
Mm-hmm.
language group when it comes to that, when it comes to New Mexico and Southern Colorado Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have created our words that have been merged in from English words, Nahuatl words, other
Yeah,
Pueblo
we got
words
Calo too. You know what
like
I'm saying?
and all.
So,
So our dialect is completely different from Mexico's dialect.
I mean, that
So
goes
we have
by,
different
but
words
see,
because
okay,
of the
but
languages merging together. So when it comes to African American vernacular, the same thing applies. They had the same thing. They were detribalized. They were forced to speak English. They were forced to speak Spanish. They were
mhm.
forced to speak French, depending on who colonized them. They couldn't, if they didn't speak it fluently, some words got twisted and mixed around, and it became a word that was natural for them to say, and that's what they use. Same with us.
Mm,
So to say that is bullshit is
it's
black, bro.
what?
It's anti-black,
No,
bro.
it's not.
Because
No,
the
it's
same
not.
thing happens with us. How is it that we can have our own dialects, but they
Mhm.
can't?
When I speak with someone in Spanish, listen, I was an interpreter. All right. When I worked out, when I got out the army, I worked as an interpreter. Okay. And one thing I know is the difference of speaking properly in Spanish and when I'm gonna speak my slang in Spanish.
Properly.
Properly.
What do you define as proper?
Oh my God. Are you serious right now, dude?
Seriously, what is defined as proper?
Now, do I speak like perfect Castellano from fucking Spain? Obviously
Oh,
not.
Castellano is proper Spanish.
My God, dude. Do you speak Spanish?
No.
Okay, then never mind. The point is not even
Oh,
there.
no.
So no.
Want to know
Because
why
you
I
know
don't speak
what?
Spanish?
No.
So
Hold on.
it.
No. You
Because
let
I
me
don't think
finish
you
my point.
understand,
Let me finish my point. Let
bro.
me finish my point. Let me finish my
Could
point.
you? Okay, go ahead.
No, it's my point now.
Go ahead.
See, my point is when I was an interpreter and I was translating between the English speaker and the Spanish speaker, because I had to translate between them, I spoke the proper Spanish. I'm not going to be out there talking my slang because just like Mexicans have slang, Puerto Ricans have a different slang, Cubans have a different slang, they have different terminologies. But at the end of the day, when we use the correct wording, all right, for the things that I'm speaking about, then we all understand each other.
All right.
That's
So
what I was getting at.
here's the thing with that, right?
Hmm.
So first of all, I don't speak Spanish because my grandmother and grandfather were beaten.
Yeah, I'm tracking.
So we're not gonna talk about you don't even speak Spanish, so you don't have an opinion on this.
I didn't say you
So
didn't have an opinion.
let
I
me
didn't say you didn't have an opinion.
so
Let's
so
not get let's
so
erase that
so
out the way.
so
Don't
then
make
we
that the
understand.
narrative.
So then we got to understand definitions, and you're conflating. One, you've conflated accent with dialects.
Oh
Then
my
two,
god.
you are now saying that Castellano Spanish is proper Spanish, which is completely wrong. That's number two. Number three, the reason
What
why
Spanish
we
do we
have
speak?
the reason why we
What
don't
Spanish
all
do we
speak
speak?
the same dialects, and the
What's
reason
being
why
okay? What Spanish was spoken in Mexico?
some was Castellano, some of it was old, like a different. I can't even.
What's the majority that people speak in
But it's
Spanish
not even
now?
Castellano. It's a mixture of Nahuatl and Spanish.
Okay, that you're talking about Calo, and we're not talking Calo. We're not talking
What that is what it is.
okay, but oh my god, dude.
Even
Okay,
here, even in New Mexico and Colorado, it is a mixture of
I
Tewa,
get it. I get
mixture
it.
of other
There's
pueblos and
certain words
Nahuatl.
that go. There's
So
certain words.
it's a separate whole ass dialect.
But what's the primary language in there?
Why did we have that as a primary language to begin with?
Which one, Nahuatl or Spanish?
Spanish.
Because the colonists came.
Okay.
It's what
So
it's what was
that doesn't
BGP. It's what
so
happened in that time era, in that
what do
era
it
of the
still
world.
happens to this day? You
How?
don't tell me that they don't. My mother was an ESL teacher. She
Okay.
just retired like 5 years ago.
Okay.
To this day, they sit there and still tell kids that they need to speak English. They make kids feel embarrassed for speaking Spanish. Then they
That's
also
wrong.
hold on. Then they also I know this because my mother has actually had to deal
No,
with
I'm
it.
saying that's wrong. That's
So
wrong for them
I
to do
know.
that.
So then they also tell these kids that they need to be speaking quote unquote proper Spanish and not their own dialects. The problem with that is that you continue to erase native languages that way because a lot of the native people, when they were forced into speaking Spanish, they couldn't speak their languages publicly. So
Mhm.
they incorporated their language into Spanish as well, which is how you get the different dialects from Puerto Rico to the Dominican to Cuba to Mexico to even New Mexico and Colorado have a completely different dialect. So you get these different dialects because there's a way to preserve language,
Mhm.
native language.
Okay.
The same thing happens with Africans when it comes to they went through the same thing. They were detribalized, they were pulled, they couldn't speak their native tongues. They would be punished for doing so. So they
Mhm.
incorporated on top of their accents speaking English, some words were changed because of their original accents to their language would alter a word. That's what happens with African American vernacular. It's the
But we're
same,
not talking about just one word that gets. If we're gonna go back to the whole, the
bro.
black
That's why we
speak.
have dialects altogether.
Okay,
None of
so
us
again,
speak Castellano. None
is
of
there okay? Let me ask you something. See, I used to have a heavy accent, believe it or not. I had a heavy accent. Um, that I'm sure you've seen all the stereotypical LA Cholo movies. I
yeah.
had that accent. All
Okay.
right. Believe it or not, I had that accent. And unfortunately, does it come out sometimes? You get some beer in me, you put me around the right people, and it comes out. However, when I did join the military, and I remember I wanted to go up in rank, they were telling me, hey, you got to stop talking like that because I kept saying a or fu or orale. I kept talking like that. And that's not a professional way to speak.
What?
What?
They told you couldn't
Mhm.
speak how you normally speak.
They told me that accent, yeah, that because I sounded
So do they?
very,
Have
huh?
you heard some of these Bama boys in high ranks talk? Like
Oh
what?
God, yes, yes, I
So
have.
so you see how
I've
that
heard my platoon
stupidity is
sergeant
there to
talk.
say
Trust
you
me.
can't speak how you grew up speaking and that they can.
So
They made you
it
change your
was
entire
my
vernacular.
accent. It was my accent that I had to change because it
Right.
was very.
Why? Why would you conform to that? Why would you let them tell you you're unprofessional because you have an accent?
Because thinking about it, the way I sounded, I did sound unprofessional the way that I spoke
How?
because it sounded unprofessional.
So certain words, yes, could be unprofessional in certain settings, but
Hmm.
outside of that, the accent can still be the accent. You
Mm.
change up your entire accent. You don't have to say certain words. You can sit there and still sound like a quote unquote cholo or whatever, Chicano, whatnot, and not say orale.
tracking that 100%.
So
But
why would you
again,
change up your entire accent because they said it's your accent sound, not the
because
word,
it was the way
the
that I spoke. It
accent.
was all combined together, and I just changed it all. And I did. I had to do it because and it didn't even come from a white
I
person or a
never
black
changed my
person,
accent when I was in the military, not once.
and that's good for you. But for me, I changed it. It came from another fool that was Rasa, and he was like, "Hey, fool, if you want to go ahead and do this, you got to do that." All right. He didn't say it like that. He's like, "Hey, Lopez, if you want to,
See,
you
that's
got to stop talking the way you speak because it sounds very unprofessional." And not only that, apparently
the problem.
it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? And I'm okay with it because you know what? It benefited me when I got out of the military, when I went to look for
But that's the
jobs.
problem.
No, it's not.
You have
It's
to
because you know what?
you have to conform to how they sound
You call it
in order for
you
you
call
to
it
get
what you
an
want.
opportunity. So when you
Exactly.
talk about systemic racism, right, you have
Here
to
we go.
change who you are in order to conform to
Well,
them,
I mean, to
in
me,
order to
I
have an
figure it's bettering myself
if
as
you
well,
are
though.
just like if you be who you are, so you have to change, literally changing who you are. It's not necessarily bettering yourself because you change your accent to sound like them.
No,
You're
I'm bettering my speech. I learned how to I learned different words. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that for a fact. I learned how to I learned how to express myself differently. Um, Again, this is just my
but that doesn't
experience.
have nothing to do with accent.
And
No, it
again,
doesn't.
as I was changing my accent, I had to change the way that I spoke. I had to change words that I was using as well. So I just transformed it all. Now,
Have you
I'm not saying
not
that I'm the
heard
most fucking
have
educated
you
person in the
not
world because I'm
heard
not.
professionals? Have you
Mhm.
not heard foreign dignitaries? Have you not heard anybody that has an accent speak English and still
I
sound
don't care
professional?
about them. They're not Danny Lopez. They're not Danny
But
Lopez
that's
trying
what
to
I'm
find a
saying.
job.
You're conflating accent with
See, you're
proper
using
speech.
okay. Explain conflating. What the fuck does conflate mean?
Okay, you're combining. You're
Why
saying
not just say
accent.
combining?
You're saying that accent and proper speech are one and the same. They're not. You
You're
can
right.
still
They're not.
talk.
But
You
I
can
changed it
still
because I
you
didn't want to have that accent anymore.
you.
Like if you know
But
what's
why would
funny?
you want to
Hold
keep
on.
the accent?
You know
Isn't
what?
that who you are? You changed who you are.
I didn't change who I am. I'm
You
still
changed
me.
who you are to
I
conform to them, not
if
because
that's what you
you wanted
say,
to, not
if
because
that's what you
you wanted.
believe, if that's what you believe, to me, I find it as I'm no longer that person that I used to be. All right. Because I was, again, when I changed my life, BG, when I changed my life completely, I left a whole past of me that a lot of motherfuckers don't know about. All right. And that was tied in to that accent as well. So motherfuckers don't need to know who I was, what I was. And if just fucking having that accent was going to give them a fucking perception of who I was, I'd rather not have it. All
Well,
right.
then we
And I
go.
get it. Perception is people's fucking realities, unfortunately. We could live in the world of fucking la la land and all crimson and clover and fairies and rainbows, but that's not where we live. We live in the reality of the real world. So
Okay,
at the end of the day, how you carry yourself, how you present yourself, that's how you're gonna also be treated.
no. So as long as we conform to whiteness,
It's
then
not
yeah,
whiteness. Why does it have to be whiteness?
because that's what it
I
is. That's how
not
they.
one time, not one
Because
time did I mention white
your
at all.
accent wouldn't have no bearing on your promotion at all if
Say
that was
again.
the case. At the end of the day, your accent should have
So
never had no bearing
you know
on your
what's funny is
role.
in my chain of my in my NCO chain, there wasn't a white person. My section chief was
Think
Mexican.
people
My
of
section chief was
color are not
Mexican.
washed?
Say again.
Do you think people of color are not brainwashed by the same shit that white
So
people?
I mean, again, why did it have to be brainwashed?
Because that's what it is. What do you think colonialism is? What do you think assimilation is?
Oh my
What do you
gosh,
what do you
it's
think, what do you think all of that is?
so. What is your damn man? This conversation's gone all over the place, girl.
Yo, I don't back down on this
You
shit.
still owe me tacos, food. Don't even trip.
Listen, you I don't owe you shit.
Yes,
No,
you
but what I'm
do.
saying, no, but what I'm
But
saying,
yeah, let's go back.
you're talking about colonialism and
Yeah.
decolonizing and understanding why you're conforming to what they want. That is what allows you a little bit a step higher in the game. If you don't conform, like if you turn around, if I turn around and had somebody in my chain of command said you need to change the way your accent is because it doesn't quote unquote sound professional, you know what
You know
I would
what?
say? I would say fuck you. That's
Maybe,
exactly what I would say.
maybe, maybe it was an accent. All right. I'm trying to go back. This happened in 2006.
Sir, it could be,
I,
sir, it could be
so it could be my form of my way of speaking because I was saying a lot of not black. I was gonna say
call coach,
Blaxican.
bro.
I was saying a lot of terminology from LA. You know what I mean? So maybe it was the terminology that needed to change and not my accent that I had. Does that
Right.
make sense?
I mean, and that's probably,
Now,
and I can agree to that. But
hold on.
with that
Let
being
me.
said, you
Mhm.
let go of your accent because you thought it made you perceive people
Well,
who you
well,
a certain way. I
I
know
didn't.
people
So
with
here's the
that
thing.
accent that were never went to jail, never gang bang, never did.
Right,
It's the stereotype that's pushed onto people,
right.
right? And so
So
in order to not feel like you're part of that stereotype, you start changing yourself up in order to make them feel
so
comfortable.
again, I didn't change myself up for anyone but myself, and the accent thing, I really had to get rid of it again because I did fit in that stereotype 100%. I was that stereotype, okay? And also, the accent that I do have now, if any, is more from, like you said, you assimilate to who you hang around with, right?
Hmm.
So I hung around with a mixture of blacks and whites because there weren't many. The Mexicans that were around were few and far between in my MOS. Like so for example, the way you speak is we would say it's blackish, all right, where we're from. Even in LA, we would say that's blackish. You know what I'm saying? And it's just the way that your accent sounds. It's just how it sounds. Like my homeboy, he's from Aurora, all right? Um my boy's from out there from Aurora, and he semi talks like you. Semi, because the other part he sounds more Mexicanish with the traditional Mexican. So, and I understand that y'all in Colorado, they're not even just y'all in Colorado. A lot of Hispanics now that live out here, past first generation, the Spanish is gone. And it's not any fault of yours. You know what I'm saying? And I don't look down at people that don't speak Spanish. I know there was a lot of motherfuckers that did that. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, how can you be raza and not speak Spanish? Well, like you said, perfect example. Your people, when they were over here, if they spoke Spanish, they would get their asses whooped. You know what I mean? They would get shamed. So, anyways, but yes, you do have a black accent. And I had that back to the whole thing that started this whole thing. I spoke like an 11-year-old kid, 11-year-old black kid. And I'll tell you what, the word nigga was like a comma for me. It was like a comma for me. And yes, I still use it to this day when I speak with my peoples. To
You know
this
what?
day.
Your people set you up for failure.
And that's cool. If that's what you say, you know what I'm saying? But
Because
that's how I grew up. That's where I grew up. And I'm talking about my black folks that I grew up with. Okay.
it
Because
doesn't
it
matter.
wasn't until the mid 90s, not mid 90s, to the early 90s that we had this whole generational influx of all these Mexicans and Salvadorans coming in, and all the blacks that were right there in
Black,
my neighborhood,
black
all the
people,
blacks, they were moving out
black.
to like either whatever you want to call it, to either
Let's
Inglewood.
not dehumanize people.
I'm not dehumanizing anyone.
It is like, see, this is the thing, right? Here's my problem with a lot of these conversations, especially
Mhm.
with other POC. Right at the end of the
I'm
day,
not a POC.
you're
I'm an American.
that's a nationality. It's a,
Okay, and then I am an American. I
it's a
am not because
that's,
last time I checked, why is
oh,
everybody a color except white? Is white not a color?
no, it's the absence of color.
So it's a color though, right?
No, it's the
Okay, if I get a crayon and I tell you, give me the color white, give me the white crayon. Am I saying the absence of color?
because you would be incorrect because you have been taught wrong. It is literally the absence of color. White is
Ay, Dios mío.
that's what it is.
Well,
Scientifically, it is the absence of color, creating a
I am not a person of color. I refuse to call myself that.
and besides that, white people again, they created the racial structure. You,
Again, okay,
you
cool.
okay?
So then you're adhering to it
Do
by
you
calling
think?
yourself a person
Let
of
me tell
color.
you something. Do you know that during Operation Wetback, they deported brown people that look like you, that look like me,
Mhm.
who were U.S. citizens
Yeah.
during
Did
Operation
you
Wetback?
know that a lot of these
But what makes you
motherfuckers?
think that these
Did you
people?
know that a lot of these motherfuckers who praise Cesar Chavez? Did you know that Cesar Chavez loved using that word wetback?
I do. Have I ever? Have I ever? Did I even say
I,
anything?
I'm just saying, there's a lot of these motherfuckers that are
Did
out there,
I,
like
did I even
pro
say
Brown.
anything about Cesar
No,
Chavez?
I'm
Did
just
I praise
saying.
Cesar
I'm
Chavez?
I'm just
So
saying. There's a lot
that
of
has nothing.
pro.
You
There's
deflected.
pro.
You
No, I'm not
deflected from
deflecting
the
at all. I'm just saying that
has
there were
nothing. I don't
Hispanics
even
here
care. I don't
already.
even care about. I don't honestly. I don't even care about the name of the operation. Has nothing to do with the name of the operation. The whole operation was literally to deport brown people.
What year was that?
Operation Wetback was in, I believe, the late 30s, early 40s.
Again, so we established earlier in the conversation that America was a racist ass place
They
back then.
deport people who served in the U.S. military.
Again, we established that America was a
Currently
racist
now.
ass. Those that are convicted of felonies, yes.
No,
And
it's not just felonies. And they're
bro,
not even violent felonies.
exactly.
It's our veterans
I'm
who
with
get
you on that. I'm with
drugs
you on
because
that.
they got PTSD and
I'm
they
with you
commit
on
a
that.
crime. And
I'm with
instead
you
of
on that.
actually helping our veterans get the help that they
I'm
need
with
for
you
their
on
mental
that.
health, they in turn turn around and pay them back by deporting them.
And I'm with you on that. I'm 100% with you. Like I said, I love my country. I don't love my government.
So
Some of the laws are
why are you
stupid.
why
I
are
am
you
100%
here
with
to
you on that.
tell me that racism does not exist systemically?
Because that's not racism. Breaking the law is breaking the law. It's the laws that are in there.
Are white people getting deported back to
Are
Europe
white
though?
people, are they from Europe? Like, okay, let's be realistic. Are we
You're
talking
literally
about,
talking
hold on,
about
hold on, hold on.
garbage.
Are we talking about a Canadian? Are we talking about a fucking European that went to Canada, crossed from the north, in here, joined the military, broke the law? Are we talking about that? Or are we talking about people that have been here already for generations that because of colonialism, if you want to talk about what happened in 1492, cool, stay stuck back there. However, comma, what happened happened
It's
already,
literally
BG. What
repeating
happened
itself.
happened already.
It's
That's
literally
not going to change.
repeating itself. It's
It's not going
literally
to change.
so it does change if you understand the history. It's literally history repeating itself. You're sitting here telling
How?
me that
How's
instead
it
of
repeating itself?
like when you're talking about none of these systems are under have racism underlying all of it, because no, they're not sitting there searching out for white people to go and deport them. They're not doing that. On top of that, let's look at what they did with Ukraine. They brought over 100,000 people in less than a month. That's what they did.
That's a waste
but
of money
but
right there.
as quote unquote refugees, all this shit,
Mhm.
you know how quickly their quote unquote background checks were? They weren't as thorough as people want
Oh,
to
trust me. Send those motherfuckers back to Ukraine. I don't give a fuck about them.
But
They
at the
could go and
end
die for all
of
I care
the day,
about.
the system is still based in racism.
And you know what's funny is the Ukrainians, all those people from like the Baltic states and all that, the real white people, they don't look at them as real white people.
What does that even mean? The real white people?
The wasps,
Okay, how
them,
these
they
people?
look at them
The vast
as fucking
majority
sub
these white people
white.
in the vast majority of these white people in the United States that have been here for generations descend from those actual people.
Right. They descend from like the
They
Irish.
are still white people.
Ay, Dios mío. I
Are they
love this
not?
conversation.
Are they not?
Who considers them white people, yo? I don't see. That's the thing.
They
I
consider
don't. I
themselves
don't.
white people.
I look. What happened in the past, I have no control over.
Go.
None whatsoever.
Let me ask you something. Go to any white person and ask them how they identify. Go on. Go ask them how they
How do
identify.
you mean?
If you walk up to a white person and say, "How do you identify racially or ethnically?"
Mm-hmm.
and they'll
They
say,
probably say American.
"No." The vast majority of them say white.
Oh, okay.
American is not an ethnicity, nor is it
Well,
race. It's a nationality.
well,
Again,
that's how I identify myself. Like I'm an American. I'll tell you
that's
what.
fine.
One
But
thing that our people need to get
you,
rid of too. I'll tell you what. My mom does this a lot, and I fucking hate it. It's she'll say like no, aquel americano es el que lo hizo. Basically, she calls white like if she says americano, she's automatically talking about a white person.
I
And
agree.
well, it's I don't, because last time I checked, I am an American.
So you're only American because of citizenship. That's it. And technically, Canadians and Mexicans and El Salvadorians and everybody are also Americans because they're in the Americas.
Yeah, exactly,
So you're
100%.
technically
But
you're
I'm a United States of America
so you're
citizen.
technically a U.S. citizen because you
Right.
don't ever put down when you fill out your paperwork in the military, when you fill out any government piece of paper, you don't put U.S. American, you put U.S. citizen.
Mhm.
American is just a lazy way of saying I'm from the United States.
Exactly, it is, because
But
people, when they say America, they identify it as the US.
at the end of the day, it's still a nationality. Do you not have a culture?
My
Do you
Central
not come from
American,
a culture? Your culture is American. It's not
Central American, my Central
okay.
American culture,
So
my
your
background is
culture
Central American.
your culture is from Nicaragua and El Salvador, right?
Yeah, Central America.
Okay. So that is not the same thing as being American. American
Okay,
is not a culture.
but
It's
see,
a
here's the thing.
nationality.
So America, because I've always asked, what is American culture? And like as far as like the US, and I was never able to get a specific answer because we're such we're
because
so
it's
diverse.
not an ethnicity.
Right, because we're so diverse as well. Like there's culture, like you said, it's regional. Like you go to the Northeast and they have a separate culture up there. Hell, you go 2 states away, it's a whole different culture. Like you said, just between New Mexico and Colorado. You know what I'm saying?
But a lot
So
of that culture, okay, so even when we're talking about regional cultures, we're talking about the cultures of indigenous people, African people. When we're talking about what European cultures have been incorporated, some things have been incorporated into certain foods. Language was forced upon it, and religion was forced upon people. So
mhm,
when we're talking about European culture, white American culture here, they don't have culture here. They gave
mhm.
up their cultures. A lot of them don't practice their cultures. Matter of
Right.
fact, the Europeans over there on the other side of the pond
Mhm.
literally get mad at Americans because they're not properly learning the culture. They're doing what certain indigenous people, detribalized
Right.
indigenous people do, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm this," but they don't even want to learn the culture.
Right.
So we're talking about American culture. It's not an ethnicity. Ethnicity literally defines as a group of people that share a culture,
Mhm.
which includes language, food, music,
Mhm.
spirituality, all of those things that define an ethnicity. America is not an ethnic group. It is
But
just national.
wouldn't it be possible to go ahead and say that then regionally there are regional ethnicities then? Because they share the same food,
But where
the same food, the
come
same spirituality, the same language, the same common language, though they might be different in skin tone or melanin, you know, but they all still practice the same way of life. Wouldn't that be then a new ethnicity in a way?
not necessarily because a lot of that is based in
And
homogeneous.
just to clarify to people who are listening, I'm asking like sincerely, like I'm definitely asking because you
I mean,
know there
it could at some point, yes. But when you still have a lot of those peoples that are like, have kind of like a homogenized culture where everybody kind of participate, you still have the more breakdown
pause
culture, right?
homogenized. The only thing I know homogenized is fucking milk. So what the hell does that mean?
Oh, homogenized is putting together a group of cultures and like basically combining them into one thing. So
Okay, so basically kind of like the idea of what America was supposed to be originally.
well, yeah, to put everybody into one box instead of having letting everybody have their own separate boxes and
Gotcha.
their own separate cultures. So, for example, Mexican culture
Mhm,
currently is homogenized culture. It's mostly indigenous cultures from several different indigenous tribes, right? When we're talking about foods, certain instruments in our music, when it
mhm,
comes to certain clothing, when it even comes to the dialect of
mhm,
the Spanish, right? Things like that. All of these things, when you're talking about, there is some African influence because there were African enslaved people brought into Mexico. So there is influence with that. Horchata is one of those things. So some of their foods influenced into the culture, and then you have the European Spanish culture. That part of the culture
mhm.
was forced onto the people. Speaking Spanish, participating in Catholicism, that was forced onto that. But because of all of that, it all homogenized into what we now call as Mexican culture, right? Now, not all Mexicans like myself participate fully in all aspects of Mexican culture. I do not participate in Catholicism. I do not participate in Christianity. That's not what I participate in, right?
Mhm.
So when we're looking at like my culture even regionally, when you're looking at these regional homogenized cultures, where you got to also look at where are these cultures coming from. Most of the culture in the Southwest is coming from the indigenous people of the
Right.
Southwest. Chile verde, that's from the pueblos, right? All of our foods is coming from indigenous peoples because those are our foods from here. That's what we're used to, things like that. So when we're talking about this, if you go down to the southeast, you're going to have more cultural influence from African
Mhm,
American people because that's where a lot of the slave trade was occurring and where a lot of the slavery happened was in the south, even though it was
mhm,
all over, but the vast majority of it was centralized in the south. So you're going to have more of an African influence into that. When you go to certain again, you go up into the Midwest, up into like Montana and all that, you're gonna have more of a European influence because there's way more Europeans up there than they are in the urban areas. You see what I'm saying?
mhm.
So yes, it's a homogenized. Is it its own ethnicity? Not necessarily, because not everybody participates in those types of cultures fluently in a way where you can say it's its own ethnic group,
Mhm.
because not like all white people participate in certain things when it comes to African American culture in the
Right.
South, right? So I wouldn't necessarily call it its own ethnicity because it's not fully homogenized in the way when we're talking about regional areas when our cultures like in Puerto Rico or Dominican or El Salvador, when those got homogenized because of colonization. Now, now it's yes, it's this. I don't even call it a melting pot. I call it a stew.
For real, yo.
You know, you know what I mean. It's not a
The
melting.
Irish are the potatoes.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So like it's a stew. It's not a melting pot
Yeah,
because
for real.
melting pot actually promotes like putting everything into one thing.
Hmm.
I don't agree with that. I agree with having separate cultures. It's not separatism in the way of we got to segregate ourselves, but
Right,
I agree in upholding our separate cultures, upholding our separate languages, because that actually promotes, like me and you, diversity of opinions.
right.
It allows for people to progress. What we're doing when we push everybody into one culture and one huge thing, we're actually regressing humanity.
So, it's funny. I just started thinking about what you were saying right now. And you know, it's hard for the US to have one specific American culture because I have to revert back to the size of our country is the size of fucking Europe. You know what I'm saying?
That's
So,
the size of Europe. That
hmm?
just but how the maps look. It's not the size of Europe though.
Oh, I said it's bigger.
No, it's not bigger. I don't believe it is.
Oh, it's bigger than I'm not gonna include Russia, obviously. All right, Russia alone, it's its own. Isn't that Asia? I don't even know what the fuck Russia is. Is that
But
Asia
the
or
map,
is it
the map
fucking Europe?
of the United States look bigger than Europe. It's not bigger than Europe.
It is bigger. Yeah, I've seen the overlays as far like the overlays go. So anywho, I'll research that, or you can fact check me on that shit. But what I'm saying is, we can never have one certain group or we can't just be one box in one category, except as Americans, because like, even just between Florida and fucking Louisiana, which is right around the corner from each other, either on the trip on a boat or through the state, there's a whole different culture there. Fuck, just within Louisiana itself, go down south to the bayous and get down with the Cajuns. And then right next door, you got the Creole. You know what I'm saying? So it's just hard to be because it becomes tribalism. Is that the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, but tribalism, that's how people were though. That's a
Right.
natural way of humanity.
No,
Right?
and as long as I think the biggest issue that we have as
Tri-
Americans, as Americans itself, is the fact that we tend to prop our own up while knocking others down. All right. And I'm not saying you or myself or anyone. I'm just saying what it seems like sometimes that some people want to step on others to prop themselves up. Like, oh, no, your culture is no culture. You know what I mean? Or your culture is savagery. Like, a lot of the fucking racist ass folks that are from down south like to say about Indians, oh, they're savages. Like, nah, not really, dog. I mean, what y'all did was pretty savage too. You know what I mean? Anywho, my mind's going all over the place because of the caffeine.
But
My bad.
I feel like I think a way to deconstruct racism though, honestly, is to have
Mhm.
white people start understanding where they come from, because they don't have culture here. Every
Well,
bit and piece of their culture here in the United States is either very bland, like hot dogs,
hmm
right, or it's appropriated from other cultures.
hmm
That's all they have. They haven't actually they gave up their cultures willingly to conform to what we call whiteness. They did.
well, I
They
mean,
don't. If you take a quote unquote Irish person here in the United States, unless they're first gen, maybe even second gen, they're
mhm,
not participating in Irish culture in the way the Irish people in Europe
right.
are. So you
Well, I
say
mean,
it's lost,
exactly.
but they and unlike us, our cultures were illegal to participate.
Right. Well, I mean, it could be as well though, depending where you go. Like, I'm sure, like if you go somewhere in Appalachia, and find out those people out there in the hollers that they still have they still maintain their old ways from back when they
Yeah, but
fucking
that's a
came.
small percentage of white people in the
Oh
United States,
yeah.
bro. You know that.
Well, of course.
It's not going to be the vast majority of white people in the United States literally conform to whiteness. They don't, if you ask them how they identify, either racially or ethnically, they're like, I'm white.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
well, what is your ethnicity? What do you mean? Like, what
Well,
culture?
see, if I'm asked a question like that, I always say like, and it sucks. I've been doing this my whole fucking life. Like, are you Mexican? Yeah, I just say yeah because you know how hard it is to tell them like, no, I'm actually, or sometimes just break it down like, no, I'm Central American. My people are Central American, just because it's easier than say Nicaragua and El Salvador. And I'll tell you what, man. Speaking about Nicaragua and El Salvador, what I wish they would do in Central America, like Nayib Bukele, you my boy, dog. I really wish that they would go back to becoming a fucking united country as one, and maybe they could elevate themselves out of that poverty. I think that honestly, that oh yes, the reason they won't do it though is because there's too much greed within themselves. Hmm.
So we just got done talking about sanctions. We just
Okay.
about how the United States has funded cartels. You know about Operation Fast and Furious, right? What Obama
Hmm.
did.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you understand that these cartels are still being funded by U.S. government all the time.
So
It's a way to destabilize countries in order to take
so
over
let's
resources.
go back to Nicaragua, for example. Nicaragua right now is under Daniel Ortega again, communist.
But
And
communism, though,
hmm,
that's not even real communism, though.
it's not. Now it's just dictatorship. Just like the way it
But
was
we never
in
had
the
it
70s and 80s.
anywhere
Hmm?
modern. We haven't had any real communism anywhere.
Not the way it was labeled out to be. No. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's because people are just being people and greedy. I would never give all my fucking money or power to the government ever. I hate the government.
But
That's right. I said it, FBI. Go ahead and fucking come and get me.
argument for indigenous people, they would never give up. They would never. When you get put in a chokehold by that government,
Hmm.
them not having a choice in a lot of matters.
You right on that. I'll give you that one. Damn, how many
So
tacos do you owe me so far, fool?
no, you owe me, bro. What are you talking about?
And folks, I want y'all to understand something. We're both passionate about our discussions, and this is the way
Uh,
things should be discussed. You know what I'm saying? She's gonna have her things that she has, and I have my things that I have. At the end of the day, it's just, I'm learning things, like I'm learning new words. You know what I'm saying?
but,
Uh, uh,
but I don't speak quote unquote proper English, so I'm not
well, no,
speaking.
you're speaking proper
I'm
English.
not
Apparently,
speaking
I just don't know those big
with
ass
a
words.
accent.
I
I'm just
never say you didn't speak proper English.
fucking
I
with
said you speak with a
you.
black accent. You
No,
do.
but we're not gonna go down that road again.
But
No,
you do,
not,
fool. You
that is not
do.
how that works.
That's how it
Not
works.
how it works.
It's a regional accent. How about you wanna go with that? It's a regional
Sure,
accent.
have a combination of living in South Texas and Texas for all of my adult life, with the
Mhm.
exception of like 4 years of my adult life. I'm 41. So,
I
and
can still tell you that I
so
I would
first
know
half of
that,
my life I lived in Colorado. The second half of my life I pretty much lived in Texas. And it's
and
South.
I can tell you that I could hear you over the phone,
So
and
my
I
accent
would know
is
that you're not black,
both.
but you speak with a black accent.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
No,
You do.
I don't.
Just you do.
Now I do say certain African American vernacular words, but it's not
American vernacular.
that's
Give
black.
me an example of African American vernacular.
An example of so
Because
sir,
please don't tell me that he be down the street is African vernacular.
actually it is.
See, that's just improper
No,
speaking.
no, 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 no. The reason why, okay, so again, this comes from when you have somebody who already speaks a different language and they're learning English. When it comes to, you already know it. You could
Mhm.
probably tell with some of your family members who their primary language is Spanish and they've learned,
Mhm.
and they say things in
Yeah.
in a quote unquote incorrect, improper way, right?
Right.
That is how that became to be, because they're talking about people who already spoke a different language, now are learning a second language, and they may say things improperly, but that became how their speech was
Let me
normal.
ask you a question. What is the proper saying of asking someone the time?
What time is it?
Thank you. So
Okay.
we both agree that's the proper way.
And
What time it be? What time it is? Is that proper?
but again, it became because of how they were learning English.
But we just
In
you just proved my point that there's a proper
it,
way of
it's
saying something. I
yeah,
asked you what was the
there
proper way of asking the time, and you
bro,
said, "What time is it?"
bro. Tell me, you speak Spanish was your first language, was it not?
Till I was in kindergarten.
Okay, so you grew up learning English in the quote unquote proper way,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
LAU. You have to understand the LAUSD system. But yeah,
You
sure.
know what I mean, right?
Hmm.
So when we're talking about when people come over here and they don't speak, like we're talking, let's say a 22-year-old,
Yeah.
right? And they're
Okay. Got it.
English, okay? And they may say the phrase a little bit backwards
Incorrectly. Yeah.
or improper according to quote unquote proper,
Right.
even though technically to
It
the
would be said
we
incorrectly.
don't even
Yes, I agree.
proper,
They would say it incorrectly.
right?
You're
Even
dancing
in
around it.
English, we don't speak proper English to
Right.
them.
Oh hell no, we don't. You know the ones that speak
So
closer to proper English are the motherfuckers down south.
right.
Go figure that one
Uh,
out.
ex- my point exactly. So a lot of the times when you're talking about all of these, when you're talking about enslaved people, you're talking about enslaved people that came over here speaking one language
Hmm.
and were forced to speak English.
Hmm.
So those words, how they spoke, that gets translated. Like for example, my grandparents, when they said certain things in English, I repeated how they said it.
Hmm.
And that continues over through the generations. So it's not that I'm purposefully trying not to speak quote unquote proper English. It's
Hmm.
just that that's how they said it because that's how
Right.
they learned it, and it
Right.
just continues through the generations. That's the same.
Exactly. So, but again, there is a correct and
So,
incorrect. I'll
but
give you
it's
an example that
part of
Coloradans
the
use.
culture now.
I'll give you an example that you Coloradans use. All right. And I've heard this amongst many of Coloradans. Again, my homeboy, Aurora, shout out Aurora. If y'all never been to Aurora, it's on the outskirts of Denver, headed towards the airport. If y'all know anything about being close to the airport in any city, y'all can read between the lines. Anywho, like for example, we say in California, in LA, we'll say mijo, mija, mijito, mijita. And in Colorado, Spanish ish, they say ita or hita. You know what I'm saying? They take out the me part of it.
We say hita and hito.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So it took me a while to figure out what the hell y'all were saying when y'all said that, but I eventually caught the term, right? So
Mhm.
what I'm saying is, yeah, y'all, it's not correct, but we understand what you're saying. You know what I'm saying? What I'm
But that's my point though. Even when you're talking like, okay, let's say me at 41, the little bit of Spanish that I do know, I
Mhm,
be fucking up like when I'm supposed to say like a verb before a noun or a noun before a verb or whatever.
mhm.
I be fucking up on the grammar all the time, right? I do say shit like that, like I do. But at
No, no, I'm saying time out for one thing, one reason only. Whether it's in English or Spanish. When you start throwing out words like verbs, adjectives, pronouns, and shit, I don't know what any of that means. Ninth
okay,
grade education, all
so
right? Seriously, I'm like lost.
but it's how you would put together a proper structured sentence
Right.
when you're using these things. I will say things backwards.
Okay.
I will say things improperly when I
Right.
speak Spanish. People will look at me and be like, "You're saying it wrong. You got to
See,
correct yourself, right?" But also, when it comes to accents, like for example, I have my niece who she does speaks way more Spanish than me because we're trying to get it so that the kids learn at least Spanish, right?
yeah.
So, my niece speaks way more Spanish than me, but she's not good at rolling her R's.
Right.
So it's the same thing. So when you got, accents, African accents, that they're maybe not good at saying a certain word because of how their language is, their accent isn't going to completely allow them to say things. When I was in Iraq, right? When I would say certain Arabic words, I didn't say them properly because I didn't know how to do the thing. I'm not
Hmm.
good with the thing, the
You're coughing
glottal
up the phlegm.
right. Yeah, I'm not good at that. So they understand what I'm going with
Right.
it, but I'm not saying it properly. It's going to have a different type of accent, different connotation to it, simply because I can't say it the way they say it because didn't train my vocal cords at a very young age to be that.
Right.
So the same thing goes with African American vernacular. It's the same thing. It then becomes part of the culture. That's what it is. The same thing with us. Like you said, hito. It's
Hmm.
part of the culture.
Right.
It's something that has lasted. My grandmother says hita. It's
Hmm.
I say to my son hito. It's generational. It
Hmm.
doesn't go away. It may be improper, but it doesn't go away.
Right. Exactly.
So the same thing you can say. You can literally apply that same thing to
Right.
African American vernacular.
Okay. Perfect. Since we're there now, when we're discussing about my interpreting, what I would do with interpreting, there's a way that I'm gonna say es mi hijo versus uh the slang term of hito. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So that's why I was saying that there's a difference between proper and then our dialect that we have.
Right. But that doesn't dismiss the fact that that means that African Americans also have a dialect. They
Oh no, okay.
have
So
words
here's the
that
thing.
that's down and that stays within their culture of language now that they have. Same with us. You're I can't hear you. Your mic went out. But this could be a good time to take a pause though, because I gotta go use the restroom if you're
Let's just wrap it up.
okay.
Are you good with wrapping it up for
Wrap it
now?
up for now.
Yo, this has been a good combo though. I dig it. And I know your blood is boiling.
No, no, I'm
I
good.
know I got
I'm
your blood
good.
boiling.
We kind of went
No,
off the
what?
topic of immigration and borders, but
God damn. See, but this is the way. What I want y'all to understand before we wrap this up. This is the reason I call this on the gun line. Because in the military, in combat arms, in the field artillery, all the best conversations were had on the gun line. And there was never any kind of while we may be passionate about our thoughts, our voices, and we might even yell at each other or get loud, but there was never no disrespect towards each other. There was never no animosity. And then after our conversation, when the fire mission came down, guess what? We went back to work together as a team because at the end of the day, it shows that we can have discussions, whether we're passionate about different sides, but we still come together as one when we need to. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, BG and myself, we want the same thing. We want our people to be elevated. All right. And I don't mean just, the Mexicans or the Salvies. I mean, all people, especially our youth, y'all. Our youth are fucking up. Y'all fucking up. And by the way, BG, can we agree on one thing though?
what's that?
White people ain't gonna be the majority no more, y'all. We're already out. We've been doing it for generations the right way. We as Latinos have been doing it the right way. You know what that was?
You as a Latino, me, I don't.
Whatever you want to consider yourself. But
But
our people have been our brown skinned people. The way we've been doing it without marches, without crying and complaining, we've been outbreeding them. We've been outbreeding them.
hold
Yeah, y'all
on.
said it.
That's a whole nother conversation because race is not biological. You can't
Oh, here we go.
you can't outbreed it, and I can go on a
Oh,
whole.
we outbreeding them.
No,
We're
no,
making everybody look like us.
that's not how that works.
Okay, but we're making them look like us at the end of the day.
That's not how that works either.
It's happening though.
But no, that's not how that
Have
works.
you seen? Have you
Like,
not seen? Have you not seen little girls named Brittany Lopez or Kimberly freaking Rodriguez? Or a Skylar Trevino. They're out there because we're
no, 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 that's not.
outbreeding. Anyways, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up with
But
that.
wrap it up.
Um,
Get into
uh,
the science on that. That I know you won't be able to dispute me on that one.
oh no, I mean, look,
But
at
yeah,
the end
no,
of
but honestly, yeah, but no, you good though, but like you said, it's all about civil
it's
dis.
all love, baby.
We don't, I'm not mad at you. I disagree with you
Of
highly on
course.
a lot of things, but I'm not gonna sit here and cuss your ass out, because it's a respectful discourse. I
Yeah.
prefer respectful discourses. At some point, though, you know, uh, you know, it's about to me. At the end of the day, as long as it's civil, there's still the respect. We
Yeah.
can come back and continue to argue the points
Hmm.
because at some point somebody's gonna concede.
Well, here's the thing. Um, like I was saying earlier, I don't know if I said it before we started recording or not, but my mind is hard to change, and I know your mind is not going to be changed. But this is more for the listener, for them to make up their point of view where they want to be at. You know what I'm saying? And
Right?
it's not no right or wrong. I mean, I'm always right anyway. But I'm just joking. I'm joking. But BG's got to go
You
handle some
see how he
business.
deflected into so many different conversations. I'm just
That's how I roll, baby. But
kidding.
no, with that being said, thank you for being here, BGP. You're more than welcome to come here anytime. Please make sure you let your people know to come watch this watch me getting owned by BG on your TikTok. All right, let them
Hey,
know that you fucking destroyed me, you crushed me. All right, because that's what I'm
listen,
gonna be putting on the headline on this.
listen, at the end of the day, you can come on my platform and then we can see how well I destroy you on there. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, I see what you be doing to people there already. So, all right, homegirl, you have yourself a good one.
All right.
It's been a pleasure. Make sure y'all go check her out, Brown Girl Pride on TikTok. I believe
Mhm.
that's the only socials you use, right?
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
the same on both IG and TikTok.
All right, so make sure y'all go at Brown Girl Pride. Brown Girl Pride. Not Brown Pride Girl, Brown Girl Pride.
There
All
you go.
right. All right. Viva la raza, cabrones. With that said, rounds complete. End of mission. Gun line out. Deuces, y'all. All right. Hey,